Hi, and welcome to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation focused on youth mental health. Before we begin today's episode, I just wanted to let you all know that all content that is found in our podcast is created for informational purposes only. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, or therapy. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard in this podcast. Thank you so much, and without further ado, let's get started.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Tarika Foundation podcast. I am your host Poonam and I have Diane Tillman with me today. She's a licensed educational psychologist, marriage and family therapist, values education authority, and a meditator. We are talking about the living value education. If you remember last time we were talking about bullying, and Diane shared with us a beautiful way to handle bullying, and there were some guidelines also given to parents how not to raise bully. So today I would like to talk about the impact of social media and video games, because we do know number of young people being depressed has increased and suicide rates for young people 11 years older and others are also increasing. So Diane, I would like to ask you some of the guidelines you would like to give us parents regarding the usage of social media and video games.
Wonderful, Puna. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you again. Video games usually start many, many years before social media. So let's start with that. But I know that sometimes I see very, very young children playing with their parents' phones or having their own devices. And video games can be creative and fun, and children can learn, but they're no substitute for playing and for blocks and for Legos and for being outdoors and wandering around and time with parents and family. And so one of the things that is recommended for children is to really have very limited time with games and on screens in general. It's so important for children to develop their motor skills and their spatial relationships. And they do that completely differently when they're working with things, with objects, with working their whole body and jumping and playing and swinging and building. So regular play is important. Screen time we need to limit. For little children, I know parents will have a hard time with this, but at 2, maximum 30 minutes a day. And when they're maybe 4, then maybe maximum an hour. And I know that's hard because parents, it's a convenient babysitter. But it's really important for the child's progress. I know that some children can become addicted to video games, and this is a real problem. And unfortunately, when it develops, it's a very serious problem. Some teens in particular, they can want to spend all their time on video games, locked in their room. They don't want to interact with their families. They're grumpy. They hardly say hello. Their schoolwork goes down. And parents sometimes are so lost. They don't know what to do. So it's a huge problem. So how do you know when your child is becoming addicted? And how do you prevent addiction? So I just told you some of the ways you can know your child is addicted. They don't want to do anything but play with video games. They get upset if they can't play with their video games. They don't seem to enjoy time with the family, time with their parents. They don't even really want to go out and be with other kids. They just want to be in front of that screen playing. So these are signs, they're staying up late at night, they're not getting enough sleep. These are all signs that the child is way too into video games. And there are special programs where parents send their children for like a year and a half to break an addiction, because some teens have given up any desire to want to go to college. So be careful with video games. And again, it's all about balance. Number one, what is your relationship with your child? Enjoy us time every day. Have family time every day where you put away the screens. The parents turn off the cell phones if all the kids are home. So everybody turns off their cell phones and you have family time. The kids can help cook. You can go for walks. You can have game night. You can have a screen and watch movies together. But play and walk and talk and read and roughhouse if they're young and have a good time. There was a school district in Southern California, and they asked parents to experiment for a week and not have their kids play video games for the 5 days of school. And so this one set of parents that I knew, they had 3 children. One of the boys was slightly autistic. And these parents were amazed at the difference in the children after 1 week. The children got along better. They interacted more. The children interacted with the parents more, and they were a lot happier. So they were fascinated by that. And so from then on, a household rule was no video games during school days, only during the weekends. And there was a limit on that. I think it was 2 hours a day. So consider limits. And I'll ask Poonam to share a story because she shared it with me. Poonam, why don't you share it now? You had such a lovely story about the limits that you created in your house for your child.
Absolutely, Diane. So what you were saying, I could see that with my own child. I felt he was getting addicted. So I had to be educated first myself, what could be the impact of these video games on his mind. And I did see that, like you were saying, I saw after playing video games, he was more aggressive. So I even made him read an article and showed him the bad impact this video game can do on young minds. So that made a difference. So other thing, what you mentioned about the limit, even his doctor, pediatrician told him only to keep 2 hours as the screen limit. So we talked about it. I did tell my son I understand video games are important to him. His classmates are playing. He feels left out if he's not playing. But we need to make an agreement, and he agreed to play over the weekends and including Friday, but 4 days he did not touch video games. He was just focused on his studies. So that worked out great. So definitely, as you were mentioning, it's a challenge for working parents and kids. They really want to fit in with their friends and they want to play video games. But as you said, balance is the key. So I'm glad it worked out great for me.
Wonderful, Poonam. Congratulations. A couple of things that you did were really interesting. One was there was a 4-day break of no video games. That's interesting because it allows the child to enjoy other things. If we look at drug addiction, let's just look at drug addiction. But if the person is not on their drugs and they're trying to recover, then for 6 months afterwards, their dopamine levels are lowered. It's as though they've used up all their dopamine with their drugs. And so what happens is they don't enjoy other things. And so this is why so many people relapse within that 6 month period, because they're not enjoying anything else. So one of the key signs of addiction is that people aren't enjoying. So by having this 4 days free, they're not depending on something that's external like the game to provide their pleasure. And another concern I have about video games and screens is that the reinforcement is so automatic. And it seems that people, adults and children, teens, are more needy. They want that feedback immediately. It's like their ability to delay gratification is decreasing. This is not a good thing for them, for life, nor for society. But, a couple of things. So one, if your child really loves video games and they don't seem to be addicted, make sure you're having that balance. Are you getting time with your child? Are you in balance and happy and content? So that's a whole other topic. But are they sleeping well? Are they on a healthy diet? Are you having them help with things around the house? Do they have responsibilities? Do they enjoy their siblings? Do they have friends at school? Are they getting their schoolwork done? Are they doing well at school? If you're answering yes to all these questions, fantastic. But then, as you were just sharing, Poonam, you were looking at the guidelines and you didn't allow your child to have a guideline that wasn't recommended for children under the age of 13. That was very wise of you. It's hard to be asked by your child, all the other kids are doing it, Mom, Dad. Everybody gets to do it. I'm the only one that da. And it's really hard to say no. There's a reason there's guidelines. Say no. It's really important as a parent to think before you say yes or no. If it's good for them and you could possibly manage it, oh, say yes and enjoy it. But if it's no, think first. But once you say no, stick to it. So don't let them get on the social media platforms either, like Facebook. So, they're not allowed before 13. They're currently trying to develop an app for children younger than that. I just signed a petition to protest against it just before I got on this call. But help your child choose games just like you choose the books when they're little, when they read. Help them choose games. Get educated about it. And you may even want to play video games with your child. Some children like to play games where some of their friends can join in. And they may be quite interested in having mom or dad play with them too. So when you do family time, there's one father and son, and they play for an hour after he comes home, later on after he comes home from work, but they play for an hour every night. It's their bonding time, and they talk about the game, and he likes to play with Dad because Dad's not so competitive as some of his friends. But get involved, let it social. So anyhow, those are some of the things about video games. And Poonam, shall we go onward to social media?
Yes, I wanted to share one more thing, Dan. Like you mentioned that age, right? So when my son was little bit disheartened to know mom is not going to buy that game, which is 13 and above, what I did is I took him to the GameStop shop and I said, you can choose whatever you like with the rating E, means everybody can play, as a replacement. And I said, yeah, when you turn 13, I promise I will buy you. So I kept my promise, and he
Beautiful.
happily chose another game. So that also worked out great. And your other advice, my husband did get involved, and even my daughter. So they did use video game in a positive way also, to do that bonding together. And that table topic was there to discuss about the game. So yeah, it's up to us. Technology, are we abusing it or are we using it for greater good? So thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. Uh, so Dan, I think we do have very important topic of using social media and guidelines about that, as well as cyberbullying. So I would like to talk to you more about those subjects, as I think with pandemic right now, we do know everybody is online, and I do feel the usage of social media as well as cyberbullying has gone up. So I would love to have your thoughts on that in next episode. Thank you so much for joining us today.
A real pleasure, Poonam, as always. Thank you.
Talk to you next week.
You are listening to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation. As part of our youth series, we will be releasing new episodes every weekend, so make sure to continue to check those out. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and thank you so much for listening.